This video is brought to you by Temu. Thanks to the people at Temu, they are giving new users a $100 coupon bundle. Click in the description below to claim the bundle and use them for your next purchase.
Naruyuki is a normal high school boy from a poor family who has no choice but to tutor the three most popular girls in school in order to gain a scholarship. But he soon finds himself with a harem of 5 girls, including his teacher, which makes his high school life full of classic animation amigans and heavenly sights. But his crazy harem adventure begins on one fateful day when Naruyuki is summoned to the headmaster's office and is asked to tutor 2 girls that are considered untutorable, but are also geniuses in their respective fields. Rizu is a genius in the fields of math and science and is given the nickname Tiny Computer due to being under 5 feet tall. Fumino, on the other hand, is a genius in the fields of art and literature and is given the nickname Sleeping Beauty due to her tendency to fall asleep during class. With no other choice, Naruyuki agrees to help tutor the girls, but he has no idea how he's supposed to tutor geniuses. Later on at the park, Rizu tells Naruyuki that he's just gonna abandon them, like all their previous tutors before him. But he reassures them that he has no intentions of deserting them, which makes Fumino suddenly very happy. Naruyuki then learns that Fumino wants to study science, while Rizu wants to study literature, which greatly surprises him, as this is the opposite of each other's fields of expertise. To make matters worse, Naruyuki quickly realizes that Fumino is completely useless at mathematics, because she gets overwhelmed by numbers, while Rizu is completely useless at literature, because it requires interpretation rather than calculation. This demotivates Naruyuki, who then suggests that they could just tutor each other on science and literature. But Fumino and Rizu respond that they don't know how to dumb down their respective expertise, much to Naruyuki's annoyance. Feeling like they're wasting their genius, he advises them to give up and attend universities that cater to their natural talents instead. But upon hearing this, Rizu stands up and angrily tells him that she's fed up with people always telling her to pursue a life she won't be happy with, and claims that Naruyuki is now abandoning them just like their tutors before. Rizu then storms off, with Fumino soon following her lead. The next day at school, Naruyuki apologizes to the girls and gives them study materials that he spent all night working on, much to their surprise. He then passionately proclaims that he'll never abandon them no matter what, and promises to make both of them happy.
Stop the cap!
Fumino is shocked by this, while Rizu is simply disgusted, as they mistakenly believe that Naruyuki is confessing his love to both of them simultaneously. But after clearing up the misunderstanding, the girls thank him for his support, and the 3 of them head to the library to study together. But when he finds himself sandwiched between the 2 most popular girls in school, Naruyuki realizes that tutoring beautiful anime babes might be harder than he thought. But I'm sure that's not the only thing that's hard right now. As Naruyuki walks Fumino home, he learns that she wants to study science to become an astronomer because the stars remind her of her deceased mother, and Naruyuki promises to help Fumino improve at science so she can achieve her dreams. Later that same evening, Naruyuki stumbles upon Rizu playing a card game alone in a park, and learns that Rizu actually loves board games, but never has anyone to play with. So he offers to play with her, but is surprised to beat her 20 times in a row. She admits that she really sucks at any kind of competitive game because she struggles to understand people and what they're thinking. That's why she wants to pass the liberal arts exam and eventually study psychology. Before leaving, Naruyuki tells Rizu that he'll play with her again anytime she wants, which makes her incredibly happy. The next day at school, Rizu and Fumino visit Naruyuki's classroom looking for him, which completely shocks Naruyuki's friends. Both Rizu and Fumino then lean in and whisper to Naruyuki to keep what they talked about last night a secret from everyone else. After school, Yuruka, Naruyuki's childhood friend, playfully bumps him on the back as a greeting, and asks if she can borrow his notebook so she can copy off of him. This request clearly annoys Naruyuki, who refuses despite her begging, as she's been copying off of him since middle school. Surprisingly, Yuruka is a genius athlete and an outstanding swimmer nicknamed the Mermaid Princess. Unfortunately, she is failing most of her subjects, which puts her at risk of losing her sports scholarship. To ensure that she earns the scholarship, the headmaster asks Naruyuki to tutor Yuruka, much to his annoyance. At the school swimming pool, Naruyuki informs Yuruka that he'll be tutoring her from now on, but she refuses to be tutored by him and runs away playfully while Naruyuki chases after her.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
Fumino and Rizu arrive moments later, only to find Naruyuki pinning Yuruka down, while shouting that struggling is useless. Fumino suddenly bashes Naruyuki on the head with a fire extinguisher, followed by Rizu expressing her disgust towards him. After clearing up the misunderstanding, Fumino and Rizu introduce themselves to Yuruka and explain that Naruyuki is their tutor, and although Yuriko originally didn't want to be tutored by him, she mysteriously changes her mind after hearing this. But unbeknownst to Naruyuki, Yuriko has been secretly in love with him since middle school. The following day, Yuriko asks Naruyuki for help on an upcoming English vocabulary test that she can't afford to fail. He tells her to just memorize the words needed for the test and explains how she can do so, but Yuriko becomes visibly worn out just from listening to him. Fumino also tries to help her, but quickly runs out of patience. However, Yuriko does eventually manage to score a perfect grade on her test, thanks to Naruyuki's efforts. Afterwards, Yuriko shows her gratitude to Naruyuki by giving him a pencil case, only to later realize that she accidentally gave him her unwashed swimsuit instead, while she still has the pencil case. Sometime later, the headmaster orders Naruyuki to help Fumino and Rizu score average grades or higher on their midterms, a goal that every tutor before him has failed to reach. After Naruyuki leaves, the girls walk by the headmaster's office and overhear Kirisu, one of the school's teachers and the girls' former tutor, as she advises the headmaster to remove Naruyuki as tutor if the girls fail their midterms. Hearing this greatly demotivates the girls, who are afraid of losing Naruyuki. To prepare for the upcoming midterms, Rizu invites Naruyuki to her family's udon restaurant to help her study. He agrees, but soon regrets this decision when Rizu's father threatens Naruyuki not to get any weird ideas about his daughter. However, Rizu smacks her father on the head and tells him to go back to work, much to her father's dismay. Their study session lasts until evening, and as Naruyuki leaves, Rizu anxiously asks him what will happen if she doesn't do well on the midterm exams. But he pats her head and reassures her that if she fails, they'll just have to study harder for the next test. Rizu is relieved that he doesn't plan to abandon her, but knocks his hand away after a few awkward seconds and tells him not to treat her as a child. On the day of the midterm exams, Rizu thinks back to all the tutors who told her to give up and focus on math and science instead. But upon realizing that Naruyuki has been the only one who never gave up on her, Rizu gains the confidence needed to finish the test. After the exam, Rizu presents her exam score to Naruyuki and Yuruka, who are both astounded to see that she gained an above-average score. Rizu notes that it's the highest score she's ever gotten in a literature exam, while Naruyuki is driven to tears of joy by this. Fumino also scores above average in her math exam. And with both girls having passed their midterms, Naruyuki is allowed to remain their tutor, and the group celebrates together at a restaurant. The next day at school, Rizu is confronted by Sawako, the president of the science club, who considers herself Rizu's rival, despite Rizu not even remembering who she is. Nevertheless, Sawako admits that she's been spying on Rizu, and knows that she's in love with Naruyuki. But Rizu calmly denies this by claiming that wasting energy on something like love is just inefficient. Unconvinced by this, Sawako decides to join Rizu on one of her study sessions with Naruyuki and watches them intently. In order to get a reaction out of Rizu, Sawako starts getting closer to Naruyuki and asks him all kinds of personal questions. However, Rizu is unbothered by this and continues her studies. Naruyuki, on the other hand, is confused by Sawako's sudden interest in him and begins to mistakenly believe that she has a crush on him, which she of course adamantly denies. After being kicked out for being too noisy, Naruyuki comes to realize that Sawako just wants to be Rizu's friend, but doesn't know how to interact with her. That's when he whispers to her that he studies with Rizu in the library on Mondays and Wednesdays, and that she's welcome to join them anytime. However, Sawako rejects his invitation, but says that it's possible she might run into them by chance. The next day, Naruyuki and Rizu arrive at the library, only to find Sawako already waiting there for them, but she tries to pretend as if this is just a coincidence.
Right.
Sometime later, during an intensive study retreat in the mountains, Fumino notices that for some reason, Rizu is constantly staring at Naruyuki. Rizu even becomes flustered when he tries talking to her, and when she sees him having fun with Fumino and the others, it puts her in a bad mood, and she decides to run outside to blow off some steam, but soon becomes lost. Miserable, Rizu daydreams about Naruyuki coming to rescue her. As the real Naruyuki searches for her everywhere, despite the pouring rain, he eventually finds her on a cliff and reaches his hand out to help her. But Rizu is embarrassed at being rescued and becomes irritated by this, only to lose her footing and fall into Naruyuki's arms, accidentally kissing him. The next day, Rizu tries to act like nothing happened between them, even when their teacher forces them to clean the baths together as a punishment. And after a series of typical anime shenanigans that I can't show, Rizu apologizes to Naruyuki for causing so much trouble, and assures him that the kiss was just an accident. However, when they return to school, Kirisu, their teacher and former tutor, reveals that she knows all about the kiss, and begins questioning whether or not Naruyuki is truly a suitable tutor for the girls. Fumino becomes worried when she hears snippets of Kirisu and Naruyuki's conversation, and soon barges into the room to defend Naruyuki, but only seems to make the situation worse. Rizu also barges into the room to defend him, but she's not much help either. Luckily, Kirisu decides to drop the matter and simply warns Naruyuki to be more prudent in the future. Naruyuki then spots injuries to Kirisu's hand, and realizes that she had also been out looking for Rizu, proving that Kirisu secretly cares about the girls too. Upon leaving her office, Naruyuki is met by Yuruka, Fumino, and Rizu, who are all excited that he made it out scot-free. But as she watches them walk away, Kirisu remains convinced that Naruyuki is leading the girls to unhappy futures. Several days later, Yuruka finds out that Naruyuki shared a kiss with someone. Upset by this, she decides to confide in Fumino, though she claims that she's asking for advice for a friend. Fumino sees through this line, however, and is surprised to learn that Yuruka is in love with Naruyuki. Nonetheless, she advises Yuruka not to give up. As time goes on, Yuruka and Rizu's scores both drop dramatically, due to their minds being preoccupied by the kiss, which causes Fumino to realize that both Yuruka and Rizu have a crush on Naruyuki. As such, Fumino advises Naruyuki to try and be considerate of the girls' hearts, but as a typical harem main character with no brain, he misunderstands what Fumino means, and believes Yuruka and Rizu are in love with someone else. The next day, Fumino accidentally trips into Naruyuki's arms, which greatly angers Rizu. In an attempt to make up for this, Fumino tries to push Naruyuki into Rizu's arms, but instead accidentally pushes him into Rizu's massive plot cushions, which of course embarrasses her tremendously. Fumino later learns that Rizu only looked angry because she was wearing old glasses that forced her to squint, and that Rizu never actually saw her hug Naruyuki. Later that day, Kirisu stumbles upon Naruyuki trying to save a cat from a tree. But when the cat leaps out of the tree, Kirisu catches it and sprains her ankle in the process. Naruyuki helps her home and discovers that despite being completely professional at school, at home, Kirisu is an absolute slob. He insists on tidying up her apartment, and while cleaning, discovers Kirisu's figure skating awards. She explains that she used to be a genius figure skater, but had to give it up as it was not a viable career, which is why she wants the girls to use their talents, since she was unable to make use of hers. In response, Naruyuki claims that he would rather the girls regret failing than not try at all. After he leaves, Kirisu reveals that she was actually extremely flustered at having a man in her apartment for the first time, despite appearing calm on the outside. As time passes, a rumor begins to spread that Naruyuki is dating Fumino due to them spending so much time together. This leads to Naruyuki becoming the target of Fumino's fan club, who want to make sure he's worthy of their queen's love. But they quickly become disappointed by the lack of romance between the two, and the fan club decides to just abandon the rumor, much to Fumino's relief. After school, Naruyuki apologizes to Fumino about the rumor of them dating, but she responds by asking if they should just go out for real. She instantly retracts this, however, and claims she was only joking. But Naruyuki is notably flustered by this, and Fumino thinks to herself that she'd never fall in love with someone her friends already love.
Come on now, dawg. Come on, man.
During summer break, Naruyuki decides to attend Cram school, where he meets Asumi, who he assumes is a middle schooler because of how petite she is. But in reality, she's a senior who's studying to get into medical school, despite having already failed her entrance exam once. As they spend more time together in class, Naruyuki and Asumi begin to bond over how tough Cram school courses can be. After school, while trying to find the nearby train station, two suspicious men grab Naruyuki and guide him to a maid cafe named High Stage, where he's shocked to find Asumi working there as a maid. Asumi is equally embarrassed to have Naruyuki learn of her job, but she needs the money to pay for medical school. Just as he's about to leave, Naruyuki sees her study materials and realizes that she's terrible at science. The other maids then decide to bribe him with free drinks every day in order for him to tutor Asumi in science, which he does for several days. After some time passes, Naruyuki introduces the study group to Asumi, who is immediately adored by the girls due to her petite stature. But the very next day, all three girls begin attending Cram school to keep tabs on Naruyuki's relationship with Asumi. Later that night, Kirisu leaves a social gathering with her co-workers, and on her way home, catches Naruyuki heading into the High Stage cafe. As she tries to admonish Naruyuki from entering such a place, Asumi appears, and reveals that she was actually a former student of Kirisu's. While fighting over Naruyuki, Kirisu loses her grip and falls backward, injuring one of the maids, and forcing Kirisu to temporarily replace her. Asumi then has Kirisu practice her introductions with Naruyuki, which mortifies her, but arouses him. Throughout the night, Naruyuki helps Kirisu with her duties, even when she insists on doing it. This makes Kirisu develop a newfound respect for him, as she recalls the time the girls barged into her office to defend him. At the end of the night, Kirisu accidentally gets drunk on only one sip of alcohol, and Naruyuki has no choice but to carry her home. The next day, Kirisu runs into Naruyuki again, and the two walk home together. Kirisu reminisces about never being able to have a social life when she was younger due to her skating, so Naruyuki buys her some ice cream to cheer her up, only for Fumino and Rizu to also appear at the ice cream shop moments later. Naruyuki and Kirisu then hide in the nearby bushes to avoid being seen by the two. But when Fumino and Rizu show no intentions of wanting to leave, a desperate Naruyuki decides to pretend that he and Kirisu are a kissing couple, causing the two girls to flee in embarrassment without recognizing him. After an eventful day, they finally make it to Kirisu's apartment, only to be spotted by Asumi, who delights in embarrassing them both mercilessly. On the night of a summer festival, Naruyuki bumps into Fumino and Yuruka, who are enjoying the festival together in their beautiful yukatas, which Naruyuki compliments them on. Fumino then claims that she has to go somewhere and do something, and leaves Yuruka alone with Naruyuki. While they walk through the festival together, they come across a food stall run by Rizu's family. Seeing that Rizu is struggling, Naruyuki decides to help her deliver food, while Yuruka helps Rizu's father cook. Once they're finished with their deliveries, Rizu returns to the food stall, and Naruyuki is left alone. It's then that he notices a mask-wearing Kirisu collecting a bunch of prizes at a shooting gallery. Kirisu, who is surprised to see Naruyuki, attempts to run away, but trips and hurts herself instead, requiring him to carry her to a medical tent, which is unsurprisingly run by Asumi and her father. And Asumi decides to let the flustered Naruyuki treat Kirisu himself. Later, both Fumino and Naruyuki accidentally miss the last train home. With no place to go, they head to a nearby inn. But when they learn that there's only one room with a single bed available, they convince the innkeeper that they're just siblings. But let's be honest, that certainly never stopped anime main characters before. In their room, it immediately gets awkward as they both try and distract themselves from erotic thoughts by talking with each other. This doesn't work, however, so they decide to do some stargazing instead. Naruyuki admits that he thinks it's admirable for Fumino to have a dream, whereas he has no idea what his dream is. As they fall asleep hand in hand, Fumino reassures him that she'll be there to support him when he figures his dream out.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
The next morning, the two take the train home and are both notably unnerved due to waking up in each other's arms. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you want part 2, and make sure to subscribe so I can see you lovely people again in the next video.